There's a number on your military paycheck right now that you probably haven't seen before or never actually checked. And if your S1 shop or your unit coded something wrong, unfortunately, no one's going to tell you. It's just going to sit there quietly costing you money every single pay period. And here's the part that nobody explains. Not everything on your paycheck gets taxed the same. Some of it, like your housing, your food allowance, is completely tax free. Some of it isn't. If you don't know which is which, you have no way of knowing if your paycheck is even right, if you are going to have to owe money back or you're due money. And that's what we're going to fix today. We're going to go through a real leave and earnings statement, otherwise known as an LES, line by line, so you know exactly what you're being paid, why, and what to expect as you move up in rank. I'll be going over multiple different websites that help calculate and show all of these numbers, and I'll make sure to drop those in the description below. All right, just a broad overview of how your military pay breaks down. It goes into 3 different buckets. First off, you have your basic pay. This is your taxable salary, and this is based on rank and time in service. So that will change as you promote, you get more years under your belt, which I'll dive into later. Your second bucket is your allowances. So this is your basic allowance for housing, if you rate that, and basic allowance for subsistence. So that is non-taxable money for housing and food. Your third bucket is your deductions. So this is what Uncle Sam takes in taxes. This is your TSP contributions, insurance, and other deductions. And really, once you understand these 3 buckets, which we'll dive into here in a second, your leave and earning statement starts to make a lot more sense. We're going to start here with your base pay. This is what you receive no matter what, and it's dependent on rank and time in service. So the first question I would always get asked with Marines checking into the fleet at my unit or at the schoolhouse where they've maybe just left boot camp or basic training and hadn't looked at their paycheck before is basic pay taxable? Yes, base pay is fully taxable. Federal, state, Social Security, Medicare all come out of it. On this LES, you can see federal tax, Social Security, and Medicare withheld directly from the base pay line. When I had Marines preparing to promote or get another time in service, they wanted to calculate how much base pay they were expecting to make next. And you can go to a lot of different websites. I go to military.com where it provides a calculator for pay. You plug in your rank, your pay type, military start date, years of service, and it will provide you with the base pay before taxes. And this changes year to year as Congress approves different defense budget and pay for service members. And that link for the description for the calculator will be in the description. Does base pay increase with years in service and rank? As I alluded to earlier, yes. Base pay increases every time you get promoted, and it also increases when you hit your annual time in service mark, even without a promotion. And the pay table online will be able to show and build in both those axes so you can see that. Moving on to BAH. So what is BAH? BAH is a monthly housing allowance paid when you live off base instead of in government housing. It's meant to cover rent and utilities in the civilian market. Naturally, the next question, especially from junior Marines, is who rates BAH? How do I rate BAH? And that varies between officer and enlisted and branch to branch. Officers who are not married typically rate BAH once they check into their respective units. Officers who are married can receive BAH while in their follow-on schools, usually after OCS. So they won't receive that while they're going through officer candidate school, but they have the ability afterwards to live off base with their spouse and rate BAH. For enlisted, it's a little different. So for enlisted who are not married or do not have a dependent like a child, this is where it gets branch specific. Air Force and Space Force, typically it's E4s with over 3 years of service, sometimes earlier if the barracks are full. In the Navy, it's typically E5 and above, though I've seen E4s qualify on shore duty or if barracks are, again, at capacity. Army and Marine Corps, generally E6 to move out of the barracks voluntarily, with exceptions to move lower, like E5, if there is overcrowding. The Coast Guard starts a lot earlier, so it starts as early as E2 if the unit has no government barracks. Coast Guard bases are a lot smaller, so this is a common occurrence. However, regardless of rank or branch, if you're married, like this Marine on this leave and earning statement, or if you're PCSing somewhere without government housing available, you rate BAH immediately. Next natural question is, does BAH change for different geographic locations and ranks? Yes to both. BAH rates can vary over 300% depending on locations. If you're stationed at Camp Pendleton or Marine Corps Air Station Miramar in San Diego, it's going to pay dramatically more to that service member than if you're in a rural duty station, just because the rental market is so much higher out here in Southern California. Officer rates also run typically 10 to 15% higher than enlisted rates in the same location. And you can see that vary by rank and rank on the enlisted side and officer side. When I was in trying to calculate all this, once I got my duty station, I used Veterans United's calculator to determine what BAH I could expect and start looking for housing. And you can compare across duty stations. That link is in the video description as well. Next natural question, is BAH taxable income? No. So the IRS states that BAH is tax exempt and excluded from gross income as a qualified military benefit. So this is a huge leg up to avoid paying more taxes, to paying Social Security, federal, state, things like that. That makes it more valuable than the same dollar amount in taxable base pay. Does BAH increase with more years in service? Not directly. BAH is tied to your pay grade, your duty station, and your dependency status, not years of service by itself. But since promotions usually come with more time in service, it often does rise indirectly. If you get more dependents, that'll get a bump as well. So does BAH get a bump with dependents, and does it increase with more dependents? So yes, there is a bump with the dependent rate. It does not increase based on the number of dependents you have. It's only based on whether you have at least one. So a married E5 in the Marine Corps with one child compared to a married E5 in the Air Force with 4 kids receive the exact same BAH rate if they were at the same duty station. Going into basic allowing for subsistence. What is BAS? BAS is a monthly food allowance separate from BAH, meant to cover your own meal costs. Moving on to CONUS COLA. So what that means, what is COLA? COLA is a cost of living allowance for service members stationed in high cost areas, either within the continental US or overseas. On this Marine's LES, you will see CONUS here because they are stationed in the continental US. And if you're stationed overseas, you will see OCONUS, which is outside the continental US. So it's there to offset the extra cost of living somewhere expensive, separate from BAH covering housing specifically. You can see it as a small line item on this LES. So we just covered what's coming in, and you may think you're loaded. Before you head out to buy that new Mustang or Dodge Scat Pack with the low amount of 20% APR for 72 months and celebrate your new purchase on a porterhouse at Texas Roadhouse, we need to talk about taxes. And this is what Uncle Sam gets to take. Now that you understand what's coming in with base pay, BAH, BAS, and COLA, we need to flip to the other side of the LES and break down everything coming out, which are taxes, TSP, and other deductions you're seeing here. So taxes and mandatory deductions, FITW. What does that mean? It's the federal income tax withholding. This is your federal income tax, money set aside throughout the year toward your total federal tax bill. It is calculated off, like I said earlier, just your basic pay. Remember, BAH and BAS are already excluded from this, so you're only taxed on the base pay portion, not your full LES. You may be wondering how much gets withheld. That depends on your tax bracket, which is your total taxable income for the year, your filing status, whether that's single, married filing jointly, etc., and what you've claimed on your W-4. The US uses a progressive system, meaning you're not taxed at one flat rate on everything. You actually move through the brackets, and only the income inside each bracket gets taxed at that bracket's rate. So you can see here, I've pulled up the current federal tax brackets on irs.gov, and this is where you'll go to check whether your withholding is actually on track for that year instead of guessing. The IRS also has a free tax withholding estimator tool, and also linked, you can plug in your pay, filing status, and it tells you if you're on pace to owe or receive a refund. One more thing worth knowing, if you're in a designated combat zone, your base pay can become entirely tax exempt for that period, which is a separate topic, but worth knowing that it exists. So second deduction you'll see here, the SITW, state income tax withholding. Your SITW, or state income tax withholding, is the same idea as federal, but for state taxes. And depending where you live, that will vary quite a bit. This is bigger than most people realize. Several states charge zero income tax at all, and a handful of others fully exempt military pay specifically, even if they do tax civilians. Since service members can often choose and maintain a state of legal residence somewhere somewhat independently of where they're stationed within the rules, this becomes an actual planning decision, not just a default. And I will have a separate episode for that specifically to help you keep more money in your pocket and take advantage of different tax breaks depending on residency. So you'll see here that you can check your state's military tax rules, and I've put that link in the description as well. This will break down which states have no income tax and which states exempt military pay specifically. This is fully a topic on its own, and we'll, like I said, do a dedicated episode on that. Moving on to Social Security and Medicare. These come out automatically, just like any civilian paycheck. It's a fixed percentage of your taxable base pay, and that goes to each. So Social Security is withheld at 6.2% of your base pay, and Medicare is around 1.45%, with the military matching those same amounts on the back end the same way a civilian employer would. So the money isn't just disappearing, it's building your future Social Security retirement benefit and your Medicare eligibility, both of which you'll draw on later in life, if it's still there, if it doesn't run out by then. SGLI, Service Members Group Life Insurance. This is your life insurance premium. On this Marine's LES, it's set at the maximum coverage level, which is $500,000. It's a small monthly cost for a significant amount of coverage, and most service members keep it at the max simply because it's so inexpensive relative to civilian life insurance for the same coverage amount. So that's actually a pretty smart thing to do to contribute to the full amount. And you can see here on this visual, there's full SGLI rate charts and coverage options at va.gov. And that link is in the description as well, where you can see the exact premiums and every coverage tier, so you can have different options like family SGLI for a spouse and kids. And moving on to TSP. So TSP is Thrift Savings Plan. You will see a Roth line here. I will go into what Roth and traditional 401ks mean, and that is what the Thrift Saving Plan is. It's a 401k, the military's version. And frankly, this again deserves its own episode because there's so many decisions to make here and how much you contribute, which funds to pick, whether to go Roth or traditional. These are very important financial decisions you'll make in your career. And especially if you have time on your side, you're in your late teens, early 20s, we're going to want to break this down in a specific episode to make sure you're maximizing and building wealth long term. What the difference actually is and how to think about which one fits your situation, we'll go over all of that. For now, just know that line item on your LES is building your retirement, and we're going to make sure you understand exactly how to optimize it. That is your paycheck, fully decoded base pay, BAH, BAS, COLA, deductions, and a little bit on TSP. You should be able to look at your own LES after this and actually understand what you're looking at instead of just trusting the number that hits your bank account. I saw way too many Marines not know how much they were being taxed, what they were contributing, and that's just not the way to go about it. You're being paid real money. You need to know exactly where it's going and how to maximize it, optimize it, and contribute to building long-term wealth. If this has helped you, all I ask is you share it with your unit, a battle buddy, send it to someone who maybe has just gotten into the military and they have no idea what half of it means. This is exactly who it was built for. If you have any questions, suggestions, or anything to add, please go ahead and leave a comment. If you could subscribe, I would also appreciate that. But thanks, and we'll see you in the next episode.